In today's Whiteboard Leadership moment, I want to talk to you about the power of an orientation. Orientations are so important for new people coming on board in your church, your leadership, and especially on your team. Here at Converge, we have an orientation where I personally do the orientation with every new executive minister and every new staff person on our team. It's so important to me to establish them in who we are, what we do, and why we do it. So here's some components of a great orientation. Number one, it's important to tell the history of our past. We live in our history, and what brought us to this point very often is a part of what creates us into being who we are and what's important to us. And so telling the stories of those who years ago chose to move forward in faith will tell the faith part of your culture. Those who took risk is the risk part of your culture. Those who trusted God and were generous talks about the generosity of your culture. You're setting a foundation from your history of who you are today. The second is your heart, where you stand, what God is doing in your life. It's so important for this new person on your team to see where your heart for God is strong and your desire to see God being honored in the ministry of your church or your ministry is so important to you. And then after that, talk about the vision. Where are we headed? Here's where we've been. Here's my heart. Here's where we're headed. It's so important for them to understand that you're not just satisfied with what God has done in the past. You want Him to do something even greater and more in the future. Every time I speak at meetings, I always say this, that God has blessed us, that you and I were designed to live for something bigger than ourselves, and that we're better together, and the best is yet to come. That's part of my heart, and out of that I'll cast the vision of where we're heading together, what we're accomplishing together. And so they see that every time that I speak. The next is the culture. Every church, every ministry, every organization has a different culture. Culture is the defining set of values, beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors of a given group. You need to walk them through, here's how we do business. Here's what we do. In the church world, that means that there's going to be a theology behind it. But there's also going to be a philosophy of ministry, and there are going to be some rules about how we're going to engage each other as leaders. And then finally, once all that's done, once you've created the context for these things, it's then and only then you talk about the policies and the procedures, the ways of doing things. In most orientations, all we get is here's how you spend money and here's your responsibility, here's who you report to. But it's so important for people in our ministry to get a context of all that God is doing, where we've been, where we're headed, who we are, and all those things come together for a great orientation. This has been a Converge Whiteboard Leadership Moment. To learn more about Converge or to join us, check out converge.org.